So I've been looking around Magic the Gathering Twitter, and it seems a lot of people are upset about Voha Jaws of the Conclave. And I'm here to go ahead and tell you that, basically every single one of you is actually correct. No, seriously, this commander is the epitome of power creep, automatic build around design, and just unoriginality. So let's go ahead and get a couple things out of the way. A long time ago, it used to mean something when a card had things like Vigilance and Trample, and also had a stat line that was directly identical to its mana cost. But that's not the case anymore. We have long since gone past that point. And if you don't know what Voha does, so he's a 5-mana Naya commander that says that anytime that he attacks, put X/1/1 counters on every creature you control, where X is the number of elves you control, and then you draw a card for every wolf you control. Now, obviously, the easiest and most broken way to build this is to just build a standard elf ramp deck that has changelings and a couple of wolves, maybe some things that give wolf tokens. But you basically can ignore the wolf part of the deck entirely, because all you need is for Voha to be able to swing. He is a Craterhoof behemoth and a nigh infinite draw engine in a color that gets access to multiple and infinite combats in the command zone. I don't know how to tell you, but this thing's actually really busted. And the problem here is that it is a very automatic build around Commander. How do you build a Voha deck? You put in whatever the best changelings are, a couple of wolves, and the elf ramp package, and that's it. Because Voha is the deck's draw engine. Voha is the deck's win condition. And oh, did I mention the actual problem on the card is none of those things I mentioned. No, the actual problem on the card is the one piece of text on him that I neglected to mention. The dude's got Ward 3. Now, what's the issue with Ward? Because it's a perfectly reasonable way to protect a commander, but there's this thing that happens in game design that I don't think Wizards has understood, and that is, at a certain point, you are incentivizing players to do nothing but cast board wipes. Because nothing short of a board wipe will matter. Now, Voha already incentivized people to use board wipes to deal with him, because that's just a problem that elves have. Like, if you're playing against an elf deck, the answer to its problems is almost always hit it with a board wipe, because once you hit it with a board wipe, then the elf thing that the deck is doing stops, or at the very least stalls. But what Ward does is it says, hey, if you want to cast a spell targeting me, you have to pay a certain amount of mana or a certain cost, and then you have to, if you don't pay that, the card gets countered. So, most removal in Commander costs about 1 to 3 mana. The removal everybody's using. Generous Gift, Beast Within, those cards cost 3. Cards like Pongify, Swords to Plowshares, those cards cost 1. Cards like Bitter Triumph and Fateful Absence and Get Lost, those cost 2. Things like a Braid cost 2. That's the going rate for removal. The going rate for board wipes is between 4 and 6 mana for symmetrical board wipes, and between 6 and 9 mana for asymmetrical board wipes. So cards like Wrath of God, Dam's Overload Cost, Damnation, Chain Reaction, these are all 4 mana board wipes. And then, of course, you get things scaling up from there. Tragic Arrogance is another one that costs 5, but then gives you little ways you can make it kind of asymmetrical on your part. Then, you go higher into the asymmetric stuff, like Garruk's Uprising, but in Garruk's Wake, and stuff like, and Plague Winds. And the reason those cards cost more is because they are hitting more targets. Plain and simple. But what happens when so many commanders in the game cost as much to remove with a targeted piece of removal as it would have costed to just cast a board wipe? If you've got a choice between hitting Voha with Wrath of God for 4 mana, which also takes care of the elves, or Pathed Exile for 4 mana, which also gives them access to a free land, or, other upside, which are you going to choose? And here's the thing. Board wipes stall games out. That's just what they do. Unless they are fully asymmetrical board wipes, which you usually don't have the liberty to play against a deck like Voha, because your deck is probably not fast enough to do that, because he is the elf deck. He's already faster. Your deck does not have the liberty to just hit him with multiple asymmetrical board wipes. Not really. And if you're having to build your deck with not 2 or 3 board wipes, but 5 to 10 board wipes, then we're all just either playing Super Friends decks, or none of us are playing a Magic the Gathering game anymore. We're all playing individual games of wait and see and don't play cards until our opponent's hand is somewhere near 0. And that's not really fun for anybody. But unfortunately, that is the type of game that the ward mechanic hits. I actually think that despite Voha being a draw engine, a Craterhoof behemoth, having trample and costing literally in line with his stat line, and having all the best colors for all the things he wants to do, I think he would be a perfectly reasonable commander if he didn't have Ward 3. That's it. If you just took Ward 3 off of him, you don't replace it with anything. Don't give this fucker haste. As long as you take Ward 3 off of him, he's fine. And my case, like I said, is that the more commanders you put into the game that have Ward stapled to them, the more people are going to be incentivized to play specifically board wipes to handle your stuff. And the more players at the table that are playing specifically board wipes, the slower games are going to go, the less fun they are going to be for everybody, the more often those games are going to just stall out. When you're using targeted removal, there's an interesting choice to make. Hey, I want to remove that card, but there are 2 other people on the table who are going to be generating threats, and I don't know if they are going to, look at me in favor and not hit me because I've removed a problematic card, or if I'm just casting the card and they were going to cast one anyway on their turn, and now I've just wasted a card that I could have just waited a turn cycle to see if somebody else is going to remove. Like, it creates interesting dynamic choices, and political environments happen as a result. The good kind of politics, where we talk about card games, not the bad kind, where we talk about removing people's rights. I don't know. I was at the Capitol the other day, so my brain's on that. But to argue my point even further, this point only works if a significant amount of commanders are printed with Ward. Now, I don't know what the number of commanders required to be printed with Ward would be to make it to where most of the used commanders have some type of self-protection, which incentivizes people to not use regular removal, but instead have to arms race into having primarily board wipes to handle, but I'm going to go ahead and run an experiment. We're going to look at every commander that has been released in the last 2 years, just the last 2 years, that has Ward stapled on it. Every single one. And if I find that in those cards there is a significant amount of Ward, then, well, you tell me what that means. Because from my perspective, I'll tell you what the final number is, but of the there's 62 commanders in Magic the Gathering that have the word Ward. And mind, a couple of those don't really have Ward as a keyword. They just are called Warden or something. So it's more like 59 cards have Ward. So of them, how many came out in the last 2 years? Well, we have Treebird Gracious Host. We have Sovereign Okeanik Ahu. We have Amalia... I can't pronounce... So I am not good at pronouncing these things, and telling me in the comments that I am not good at pronouncing these things. Trust me, I know. Thank you. You're very helpful. You're very smart. You get a gold star. But she's got Ward Pay 3 life. The one reasonable kind of Ward on this list. Then Abuelo has Ward 2. Then The Meat has Ward Pay 3 life. Again, a reasonable one. Then Kylox has Ward 2. Then Codsworth has Ward 2. Then Strong the Brutish Thespian has Ward 2. Fiddleflip gets Ward 2. Radagast has Ward 1. Hey, that's a little better. Beast and Bird you control have Ward 1, though, so I hope they don't have Mask of Odexus in that deck. Shelob has Ward 2. Saruman has Ward. Discard an enchantment, instant, or sorcery card. Who designed this one? Sauron the Dark Lord. Hold on, no. I have to go back to Saruman of Many Colors. I'm sorry, but the people who try to say that the Lord of the Rings set was so amazing and the One Ring was so great because it has indestructible and that makes it so flavorful, no, I don't want to hear it. Where was this man's ward when he fell out of a goddamn building? No, I don't want to hear it, ever. This man lost to a bunch of angry hobbits, and I'm talking about in the book. Like, in the book, all it took was a bunch of people stepping on his nuts, and he was done. I don't want to hear anything. He died to fall damage in the movies. He died to a nut shot in the books. No. We don't get to staple ward to this to make it okay, wizards. Sauron the Dark Lord. Ward. Sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature. That's... Look, I'm okay with it being on Sauron. It makes more sense because you do have to sacrifice something to handle him in the story, but it is still a high ward cost. Saruman the White has Ward 2. Flowering of the White Tree gives your commanders Ward 1. Nashi Moon's Legacy has Ward 1. Kiora has Ward 3. Jin Gitaxis has Ward 2. Elend and Azor has Ward 2. Forge the Neverwinter Charlatan has Ward, sacrifice a creature. He just works well with braids, I guess. Then Ovika, Enigma Goliath, has Ward 3 and pay 3 life. Ultra Magnus gets Ward 2. Mishra gets Ward, sacrifice a permanent. Gyron Starn gets Ward 2. Rith gets Ward 2. Radabrek gets Ward 2. Nine Fingers Keen gets Ward, pay 9 life. 9 life? Okay. Cultist of the Absolute gives your commander Ward, pay 3 life. Again, one of the few reasonable instances of this. Wilson has Ward 2. Miriam has Ward 2. Minthra has Ward X, where X is the number of experience counters you have. This card's hard to deal with in Kelsane, just saying. Emoen gets Ward 2. Rafine gets Ward 1. Tivit gets Ward 3. Storvald gets Ward 3. Kyrie gets Ward 3. Varus gets Ward 1. The Tarask gets Ward 10. Ward 10! I need to see... Give me your best Tarask decks in the comments. We need to make use of that Ward 10. We need to beat assholes in Magic the Gathering. Give him Ward 10 and Indestructible. That's basically hexproof. It's fine. And then Limrith Desert Doom has Ward 4. As long as it's untapped, you know, that's reasonable. Okay. So... that's a lot of cards. Did you count how many there were? Because I made the cutoff as right after Strixhaven. So if we don't count the cards that were released in the last 2 years, Octavia the Living Thesis has Ward 2. Or, yeah, Ward 8. Sorry, Ward 8. That's it. That's it. Every single thing with Ward stapled on it was released in the last 2 years. Every single one. Wizards of the Coast decided that instead of designing cards that had glaring strengths and some weaknesses that players could work around, they were just going to staple a bunch of bullshit on those cards. So, when I look at Voha, I do agree this card's a problem. I 100% agree. This card is an overtuned menace, and he is a signal that more cards are going to become these overtuned menaces, and it's going to be very hard to have a commander deck that does not just... just be an 8. I'm saying that kind of as a joke, but anybody who says my deck is a 7 and then they bring out Voha, they're just lying. Then again, everybody who said my deck is a 7 was already lying anyway, so let's be honest, that's not really anything. But Ward being stapled onto commander creatures is a recent phenomenon. It did not happen until literally Octavia. And Octavia Living Thesis didn't have any benefits with the Ward on it as well. I mean, I guess technically Adrix and Nev had it too. They had Ward too, but they were, you know, a doubling season. So giving them protection, sure, why not? The Simic doubling season needed a little bit of protection. You already had to board wipe them anyway because they were making a shit ton of tokens. Probably. The Voha is that dialed up to 11, and typically this rate of power creep doesn't tend to happen this quickly. This is usually something that we see in 5, 6, 7 years from a particular time. Now, cards get power crept within a couple steps. Priest of Ancient Lore came out and we were like, oh, sweet, a gain 1 life, 2/1 white draw card we can flicker. That's cool. And then Inspired Overseer came out and like a set or two after that, and like, oh, okay, cool. That's just power crept. And that's just kind of how Magic is now. So for all the people complaining about Voha, I'm sorry, you're all valid. And every person who is saying that you're wrong, no. This card is an issue. He creates a toxic environment for games where everybody is incentivized to build decks in such a way that the games slow down to a crawl or they get overran. Like their options are an unfun scenario where they insta-die or an unfun scenario where people don't get to play cards. Like that. Those are the options with Voha at the table. That's all you get when you are dealing with this man. And what's the incentive not to run him? You just want to play a different Naya commander? There is no other Naya elf commander that's going to give you as much as Voha does. Hell, I would argue he is now the best elf commander. I used to think that was Lathril. I still would like to say it's Lathril, but not when Voha is sitting here pretending to be an elf wolf commander and just going, I don't give a crap about those dogs. Like, this is a card. And this is a sign of play design creating more cards that are everything your deck needs to do, all in one piece. And while that may sound like an amazing idea for a player to build around, the environment it creates is one where decks become less fun to deal with, decks are less interesting, and we see the rules committee have to make posts about, please, every player, because Wizards isn't helping this anymore, every player, please make Commander weird again. Use the weird stuff. Use the off-ball strategies. Use the budget stuff. It's one of the reasons why I like building budget decks, because it forces me into a narrow room, basically, where I need to make the best decision to put the best amount of power in a small box that cannot fit that much. And that idea is far more interesting to me than grabbing Voha and putting in Heritage Druid and all of the best elves that will give me all the best ramps so that no matter how many times I have to cast him, it doesn't matter. I have everything here. And oh, by the way, he has white in his colors. So this is an elf commander that gets to just use every Teferi's protection card. I hope you're ready for that. You've probably already dealt with that. You've probably already had games with Voha at the table, and if they've built the deck right, it runs on autopilot. It just wants to get a bunch of elves out, probably make a few of them tokens, and then turn Voha sideways. And God forbid they put a Maskwood Nexus on the board, and Voha gets to just be absolutely stupid bonkers. There is one other change I would make to him, actually. Come to think of it. I think if Voha, Charles of the Enclave, did not have Ward 3, that would be the best, but if he also didn't put the X11 counters on himself. That's the other thing. If he just supported the elves around him, since he was a support creature for the elf that he was, under, until he got killed in a set about a bunch of main characters getting killed, and nothing ever actually coming of it. I'm still sad Teysa Karloff's dead, but with all of those characters getting killed, it would make sense that he would support all of those elves. Like, his plus for wolves is giving you, the commander controller, a bunch of cards that his plus for elves would be for the other ones. But no, they have to give him the ability to instant kill with commander damage. And that's just Wizards of the Coast's way of designing cards these days. And it's kind of agitating. Because, well, like I said, these cards are great. They are strong. They are powerful. Commander is not its most fun to me and to the majority of Commander players when everybody is playing the most powerful things possible. If that were the case, then casual Commander wouldn't be the dominant way to play Commander, and CEDH would be the dominant way to play Commander. But it's not. People like playing with those restrictions. People like playing with those social rules. People like playing with power levels being a thing they have to talk about, even if nobody knows what the hell a power level 7 actually is. But that environment for Magic the Gathering stops existing when the new hotness that everybody gravitates to all the time is going to be these ridiculously pushed and power crept commanders. This is not something that I want to see continue going forward. I know that Wizards has said that they're going to stop printing as many commanders in sets, and that will certainly help a little bit. There was a time where the signpost dual color card of a set was not always legendary, but now suddenly the uncommons are all legendary in all of our sets these days. And apparently they're going to be dialing back on that, and there's usually about a 2-year wait on that dial back, so we've got about a year and a half more to go before we see the fruits of that statement. But I'm hoping that we don't end up getting, every time a new set comes out, 5 to 6 new, just overly powerful ward commanders come out, because it's not that interesting anymore. The ward idea has been thoroughly explored. We've stapled it to just about every color combination that matters, and again, the environment that a ward commander creates is not a great one. If everybody's dealing with a board wipe every turn, you might as well have just been playing with a Super Friends player with a souped up deck at the table. And if that's what you want to do, then I'm not gonna yuck your yum, but I don't know. People complain about Grave Pact for a reason. This is coming from a Grave Pact enjoyer myself. I recognize the environment it creates at a table. It's why when I want to play Savra, I pull out my deck and I ask everybody at the table, hey, is this a commander that y'all are okay with me playing today? She is Grave Pact in the command zone. If you think that's something that you're okay with, because you have like a token deck or a planeswalker deck or something that doesn't get turned completely off by the commander doing that, then cool, we can play a game, and I get to play with one of my favorite commanders. But if you're not okay with that, I'll go ahead and pull out a different deck. I actually built Dina Soulsteeper for the sole purpose of allowing me to play a deck that was Savra without Savra being the problem that everybody had to deal with all the time. I wanted a way to play that type of deck in those colors without being a problem to my table. That's harder to do when every single pushed commander that comes out that are power creeping previous commanders in their color combinations is doing what Voha's doing, and doing what the other 60 cards I mentioned are doing. But I'm no game designer. Maybe I'm just kind of dumb. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. This has been a rant about what the community is ranting about right now, and this is one of those times where the community is entirely right. Every single bit of hate aimed at Voha is 100% earned. And if you enjoy playing Voha, I am not saying this as a knock against you. I understand he is a stupidly fun commander to play because he just goes off the rails that quickly. My problem is not with the players choosing to play Voha. My problem is with Wizards of the Coast choosing to print cards like him en masse. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability that Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Blitzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.